So, welcome Lisa Nirell to Ordinary Visionaries. I'm so glad to have you here. Lisa, you've been a client of mine, a friend over the years. We've talked a zillion times. You attended my mastery group, how many years ago? 20 years ago, a long time ago. Your career has gone to great places. So here we're here to talk to you about being an ordinary visionary. So, who are you as an ordinary visionary?
Well, first of all, Robert, thank you for inviting me to the studio. It's great to see you again. I remember when we first met, it was, my God, close to 20 years ago
Yeah.
when I was a fledgling consultant and started my own practice. And somebody said, you need to go learn about action plan marketing. And then you couldn't get rid of me.
Yeah.
So I was a groupie from way at the beginning. So what's an ordinary visionary? I always say that the path to wisdom begins with a common set of definitions. And I love that you don't have a common definition of that and that you're asking every guest to define it for themselves.
No, that's not really true. I say that my basic simple definition of an ordinary visionary is someone who has a vision. And that could be a big vision, a small vision, something that's important to them, takes action on that vision. And then the last thing is to make a difference in some way. Because I think a lot of people have a vision and take action, and it really doesn't make a difference in any way. That could be argued. And so I'm inviting people that I see as ordinary visionaries, that they've had a vision, they've taken action, they've made a difference with their clients in the world, whatever. So that's my definition.
Well, what I liked about it is that you told me your definition, yet you're very curious about your guests and what we consider to be an ordinary visionary. So it's almost like you're inviting us to the studio to build and amplify and maybe fortify a pre-existing definition.
Yeah. But what I'm really interested in is how you are living your life as an ordinary visionary. Now, of course, we're not an ordinary visionary 24 hours a day. Maybe some people are, maybe Gandhi was, maybe Christ was. Well, most people, but we sit down at our desk in the morning and we think, well, who do I have to talk to? What's a client I'm going to work with? What's a project I have? And with intention and with steps and with works, we move towards the realization of our vision. And I'm interested how you've done that and what kind of things have been important to you.
Well, thank you. I really like your definition. What my vision is came to me much more clearly a few years ago when I started to get involved in something called MEA, the Modern Elder Academy, which was co-founded by Chip Conley, who's the world famous boutique hotelier who started the Joie de Vivre hospitality group and now is the co-founder of MEA, which is the Western world's first midlife wisdom school.
Wow.
And MEA was a real eye-opener for me because I spent 8 days in Baja, Mexico at their first campus, the first MEA campus. And one of the dyad exercises is to sit with a person and you ask one another multiple times, what do you do? What do you do? And so
I love that.
There's this dyad. Yeah. And the other person is not allowed to comment or editorialize on what you say.
Yeah.
Their only job is to listen.
Yeah.
And when you're done, their only job is to say thank you.
Right.
That's it. So through that kind of dyad exercise, I came to this realization that my mission is helping mindful market leaders cultivate healthy companies and careers.
And I think that's right on your website, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And so
say it again for us.
So my mission is helping mindful market leaders cultivate healthy companies and careers.
Great.
So I am willing to go places where a marketing coach or a sales coach may not be willing to go with people. I go to a place we call the third vault with my clients. And so if someone is coming to me just to improve their performance dashboard that they present to the board of directors,
Right.
could I do that work with them? Yes, I can do that kind of work. I came from corporate. I ran P&L for enterprise software companies and so forth. But what I realized is that, a holistic view on life, on the people behind the growth of the company is missing so much. The soul of business is much more important than the performance dashboard being presented to the board. One has to precede the other.
Right.
And, it only took one vice president client of mine from San Diego who was so driven by revenues that he was knocking on death's door at his executive physical. He went to get his, annual physical at one of those very fancy medical retreat centers where,
Right.
It's like a $25,000 checkup.
Yeah. I'd like one of those.
They put you through the paces, and the doctor said, well, you have a few months to live. How do you want to spend the next few months with your 7 children and your wife? How would you like to spend that? Because you're knocking on death's door. Your blood pressure is off the charts. You're eating poorly. You're traveling all the time. You're under massive stress at this company, this software company. So how would you like to spend your final months? And wow, I realized at that point.
That's the $25,000 question, isn't it?
Yes.
You listen to it if you spent that much. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the beginning of my journey when I went, okay, much like our mutual dear friend, Patrick Summer, I became that business coach with a holistic approach. Like, who's showing up to the meeting here? Your ego or your whole self, who has to live through this for the long term? And I wanted to work with the whole person.
Yeah. So how on earth do you go about doing that? Which I really commend you, because, we're multidimensional beings. We have feelings and relationships and aspirations and all this stuff. We don't just have producing results. So how do you go about helping people like that?
Oh, well, first I do my best to live what I try to practice what I preach. And I try to never preach. I only share what's working and what's not working based on now having worked with hundreds of leaders and having my courses on LinkedIn Learning and Skillsoft now reach tens of thousands of people. So
Great.
I just make sure that I don't share ideas or stories that I haven't personally vetted or experienced.
Okay.
That's the first thing. So somebody was asking me the other day in our mastermind group, so have you done any personal development work?
No, not you.
Have you done any therapy? Have you been to any workshops or anything? And I just started laughing. I said, do you know how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars I've spent on meditation retreats and plant medicine and coaches and therapists? I said, absolutely. I don't think I'll ever stop. It's so people turn to me because they know I have a large treasure trove of resources and relationships. And I'm not doing this all by myself. I have a love army supporting me.
Wow.
So I haven't answered your question very effectively, but I just wanted to take a little side trip there and tell you that I really do road test things and believe in staying committed to my own personal and professional development.
Right, right. But when you're working with someone that needs a lot of work, needs help, they're stuck. Maybe they're doing really well in some area, but their employees are rebelling and the teamwork isn't going well, and whatever. I've worked with so many people. I've heard so many stories from so many consultants, and you have the tools, you have the ability, you have the understanding. But there's also this realization that, well, this isn't going to be a, quote, quick fix. It's going to take a number of conversations, exploration, et cetera, et cetera. And, over the years, I worked on a lot of things that helped. I never thought I was nearly as effective as I could have been. You're probably a hell of a lot more effective given the kind of work you've done. So how long do you work with someone? What's kind of the process with a company, with an individual? And what does it kind of look like from where they are to where they're transformed and they're doing what works to be happy, fulfilled, and successful?
What I would do is share an example. That's probably the best thing to do.
Yes, it is.
Yes, my example, I learned that from somebody. Oh, wait, could it be Robert Middleton?
Maybe so. Tell a story. You're so relatable, right?
I had this vice president of marketing contact me out of the blue on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is really the only social media platform that I'm willing to hang out in these days.
Right.
And so I was there, and I get this message from this person, and he says, it's my first VP of marketing job. I am really over my head. I loved your course. And I have so many questions for you. I don't even know where to start. So I had a strategy meeting with him, and a virtual strategy meeting. And we found out that the company wanted to increase their growth by 5x. It was a small company.
5x.
And this executive never worked in marketing. They had a software background.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was really bold and courageous for even putting up his hand and saying, "Hi, I need help."
Yeah.
So what we found out is it wasn't a marketing problem. It was a focus problem. They had 14 different goals.
Oh,
and
yes.
When you only have, 40 employees and 14 goals, that's ridiculous. I mean, people were doing duplicate work. People were stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah.
Customers were suffering. Their customer retention rates were in trouble. And so what I did is in that case, I worked not only with that leader, but I said, we need a core team of 8 to 10 people across all the functional areas. You folks don't yet have the skill around critical thinking, and strategic planning. So we took the core tenets from my first book, Energize Growth Now, and we did a series of accountability groups, workshops, and planning. And after 12 weeks, they walked out with a growth plan and accountabilities and 4 goals. And now they're a case study on my website because they grew from 12 million to being valued at over 150 million. And the team started to get along. They launched a new product. They were able to say no to the board when they had shiny pennies and tried to move them into different directions that didn't make sense. They had clarity on where they were headed. And what's really great is the PS to the story, which is now this person is a senior vice president at a company that's 4 times bigger and could get sold in the next 6 months. And they will, with their family, experience a very nice windfall. And this person today is really dedicated not only to their family, but to their wellness and their fitness and to knowing how to say no to things that don't really matter.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of how they've come along as a marketing leader and as a family leader.
I hope they've given you a few referrals.
They have. Thank you. Yeah. Not only that, but just I love that they didn't give up. I mean, we've been working together for 6 years on different assignments, different goals.
Yeah.
And what's also cool is that they moved here from another country. They don't have other family here. You know, they're the classic Horatio Alger story of being self-made and knowing where to ask for help and where your growth edges are.
Yeah. So that's kind of the model for an ideal client, someone that is in a situation where they're floundering around, but they really need help and they're willing to ask for it, and then they work hard. And, you know, isn't it wonderful to have some dream clients every once in a while?
Well, right now I have about a dozen of them. I'm very fortunate. I mean, it's like everywhere from, you know, companies the size of Alliance Bernstein, you know, which is what, 36 billion in assets, investment firm, to a small architectural firm that's 40 million in revenues. So I really listen more for the client's mindset and their willingness to grow and their willingness to experiment more than I care necessarily about the size of the company.
Right. So when you were getting going with clients like this, what were some of the obstacles or the challenges for you to develop your service so it ultimately provided results like this? I don't know if it happened in a snap. Most of these things take some time in development.
Well, this is a very relevant question right now for where we are as a society. So I'm really glad that you're touching on it. I'm seeing well, there are two things. What I'm going to say is a little bit controversial.
Good.
And might upset some people. It's just what I'm noticing. The first is that there's this romanticized view of being an entrepreneur. Much like we admire and sometimes worship the Silicon Valley bro culture, and we put these bro culture leaders on a pedestal like many people did with the founder of WeWork. There is that feeling that, oh, you know, the grass is greener. I'm going to leave my corporate job so I can be a consultant, or worse than that, I can be a life coach. And everyone thinks it's really romantic and fun and lots of freedom. It's work, my friends. Okay. It is work, and it is consistency, and it is me messing up more times than I can remember. Yeah. I went down some ridiculous paths and I wasted like $15,000 at the beginning of starting my business by partnering with a trade show, a trade association, because they fit within the profile of the kinds of people I wanted to work with. And it was a huge money suck for me, because I didn't look at the mindset or the attitude or the propensity to spend money. I just looked at the job titles of these people. So, I mean, I've made those kinds of, I'm supposed to call them pivots now. I'm not supposed to call them mistakes, but,
or screw ups or fuck ups, right?
Yeah. All right. How about I call them experiments? It was an experiment. This is the Silicon Valley euphemism. Oh, I was experimenting with the IT consulting space. No, it was an experiment that didn't turn out the way I expected, is what it was. So
yeah. Well, the whole thing about being a visionary or an ordinary visionary isn't, I have one big vision, I go for it, and it just works out. It's like you have an idea and you try it and it fails, and then you adjust, and then again and then again and again and again. And it's tough because you think you have the perfect thing. I mean, I developed courses that I thought were the best thing in the world, and then no one signed up for them. It's like, I thought it was good, sounded good to me. But then you look and say, oh, I see why it wasn't so great anymore. I was, anyway. So, yeah, so you tried a lot of things. You fell flat on your face. You got up and said, okay. You know, I, I, this whole thing that, you spend $15,000 to join a group is not a tiny amount for a self-employed professional. That's a lot. So,
And that doesn't count the time and the travel
yeah,
and the blood and sweat equity that goes into building a go-to-market strategy, messaging, content, follow-up, websites, digital strategy. So boy, did I learn a lot from that. And thank goodness there was one other thing I did when I started my business. And I hope everyone remembers this is I joined a mastermind group of people who were much more financially ahead of me.
yeah,
And the other thing that I did is I had a business coach who had also walked in my moccasins and was several years ahead of me financially. The other thing I did, and this one always turns people off,
really,
is I put aside a year's worth of cash. And I said, if I fail, I've got a year's worth of cash to pick up and start over again. And the only debt that at the time I was married, and the only debt that we had was our mortgage. And that's it. Everything else was paid off. And so the romanticized view of entrepreneurship needs to be recalibrated. And I want people to know it is work. It is work, and it is persistence and focus.
yeah,
And then the willingness to say, this did not work. I have to shift gears.
yeah,
And not fall prey to what I think Tversky and there was a great book about two social psychologists they talk about loss aversion, where, as entrepreneurs, I can get very stuck. Like, this is my course or this is my industry, and I am going to hold on to this industry forever because it's what I know and I'm familiar with it.
yeah,
It's being able to say, didn't work.
yeah,
What's next?
yeah. So when you join the group, the mastermind group, which is great because peers that are doing similar kinds of things, you learn from them. I did this work that, it's not just for book learning, and you had a coach. What kind of things did you start to do differently than you'd done before?
Well, you're asking me to go back 23 years, Robert. So the past might be a little fuzzy, and it's called the pre-COVID fog. So I do recall I was living in San Diego. Now I live in Northern Virginia. What did I do? So you would like to know what I did differently?
Well, just any things that come to you that, oh, yes, do that instead of this. Oh, be more flexible here instead of whatever. You know, it's tricky because there's an evolution, right? I've been in business for myself since high school. I've only had a couple jobs in my life. I'm I'm unemployable because I just like to do my own thing. So,
What did you do when you lived in San Francisco, when you and Patrick were housemates? What kind of job did you have back then? Were you building websites or were you doing something different?
oh, that was pre-websites. But I'd started action plan marketing, and I was working with a lot of very small businesses of all kinds. And then I had a big, I won't tell my whole story, but I had a big move, and then I moved my office to downtown San Francisco. And anyway, I did that. And then I had a bigger network, and I joined the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce and did a lot of networking and started to do speaking, and it just grew step by step. I struggled for a long time to make enough money to make ends meet. And then a really great thing happened to me. I lost my credit because I was behind on credit card bills. And I say it was a great thing because it really made me watch every dime that I spent. And I learned how to do marketing without spending any money, hardly any money at all. And then I developed an email list of 50,000 people, and that's where all my clients ultimately came from. And that didn't hardly cost me anything. And I think a lot of people want to throw money into marketing, right? Sort of like you did, that $15,000. And sometimes that can work, but let's do a YouTube channel and all of a sudden, 5 people have seen their thing and they've spent $50,000. I see that kind of stuff. Anyway, but back to you. This is an interview about you.
But enough about you. What do you think? No, but enough about me. What do you think about me?
Right. Right.
Yeah. No, Robert, I've learned so much. I look back, I've had my own firm now for 23 years, and I look back at the books I've written, the work I've done through the 100 Coaches community with Marshall Goldsmith, the collaborations I'm doing now with Chip Conley, the team that I've been able to cultivate that helps me look good on my live streams and my podcasts, and shout out to Marissa Callie, my producer and events manager. I look at all of this and I say, the beautiful part of being an entrepreneur is that it's a spiritual practice. It forces me to be in the present moment. It forces me to go with the flow, right? Because anything can happen.
Yeah.
I've had more than 90 live streams and podcasts. The one I got paid to do with a $2 billion client of mine we ended up having a power outage in the middle of the show.
I've had that happen.
Yeah. We were in a $2 million studio and the power in my producer's office went out. This is the stuff you go with the flow, barely the blink of an eye. We were back up and running. So there's being in the moment. It's going with the flow and, not taking things personally. You can't take things personally, right?
I want to address that kind of thing because, as you say, it's kind of a spiritual practice. If you're able to stay in the moment, that is a spiritual practice in and of itself. And for instance, I was telling you at the beginning we had trouble with my recording yesterday, but it didn't upset me. It was just, that's interesting. What do we do now? It was just like it was. As Tony Robbins said, I'm really upset. Well, how about I'm just mildly peeved? I'm just mildly annoyed. I'm a little, whatever. And stuff happens. We definitely don't have control of as much as we think we have control. All this technology that we're using, for God's sake, we have no idea how it works. We just hope it does work. So this whole thing of not letting things set you back, irritate you, annoy you, being angry at people, being stuck on that stuff. You just can't have a business. You can't have a life if you're distracted like that.
No. And I think the other one that I get, when I ask my clients, and I will ask clients, why do you work with me? What keeps you coming back after all these years?
Yeah.
And they say that I'm a catalyst. They say you're a catalyst. You're a fire starter. And you're not afraid. I ask tough questions. I'm not attacking them. I'm attacking their constructs, their preconceived ideas, their old beliefs that are ready to get kicked out the window to make room for new, reframed beliefs.
Yeah.
And then the other is that I think my spiritual practices have taught me is that really there's nothing to be afraid of. Because, courage, it comes with being an entrepreneur. It's like, just, I will pick up the phone and call anybody. I'm not afraid of talking to anybody. I don't dodge tough questions or, conflict. We just go and dance with it because that's what helps me grow and stay engaged in the game of life and of leading a business.
Yeah.
So that's where I see the spirituality and business working quite beautifully together. I am also very happy that I've never talked about this in any of the shows where I've been a guest before. You are the first person to hear kind of these revelatory observations from me.
Well, let's get into this a bit more. There's one thing that I've always been interested in, and that I see as the downfall of so many businesses, is the fear of connecting, the fear of, reaching out, the fear of being rejected, all that stuff. And it's not small for a lot of people. It's so massive that some people would only do it at gunpoint. I will pull the trigger in 5 seconds. Okay, I'll pick up the phone. That's about all that would do it in many cases. So what is your, some people I think are naturals at that because of their early childhood upbringing. Maybe they sold Girl Scout cookies and they just learned how to, it was like the door slam, no big deal. They figured it out. They sold a zillion cookies. And, that's a great training for persistence. But some people didn't have that and they're scared to death of reaching out. So what is it about you? How did you get there? Or was it already a natural thing for you? Or did you have to go through, having a breakthrough about being fearless like that?
It all started when I was driving my mother's Ford Pinto wagon. It was a white Ford Pinto wagon. And I grew up I lived at the top of a mountain in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I had to drive home from high school after cheerleading practice, and it was a blizzard.
Oh my God.
And I had to climb this hill. And back then, there's no such thing as front wheel drive. And, it was a Ford Pinto. Okay. And,
Right.
And I remember this as if it were yesterday, Robert. The car was climbing the mountain and I was making great headway. At the very top, on the ledge that would have taken me down a very, very steep cliff, the car just decided to spin towards the cliff and stop. And this is pre-cell phones. And I was pretty scared. That was a moment I was scared because I thought, I cannot go over the cliff. And the nearest house is probably a quarter of a mile away. Very rural area. So I got to the house and I called my father because he's my dad, right?
You walked a quarter mile to a house.
Yeah. So I walked to the house in the snow, called my dad, said, Dad, please bail me out here. The car, it got in a spin and I can't get it. I'm afraid it's facing the cliff. So Dad, who drove a Crown Victoria, if you remember those, they're like small yachts.
Yeah.
And he shows up, and of course, his car could handle anything. He shows up, parks the car near my mom's Pinto, gets out of the car. I said, "Oh, here, Dad, here are the car keys." He goes, "Oh no, you keep the car keys. Get back in the car. I will verbally get you out of that terrible position on the road, and you will learn to drive in the snow." And so that's kind of followed me all these years. I did drive the car back home and I figured out how to get out of this stuck position.
Yeah.
And I just, between that and also rescuing 2 dogs off a mountain ledge with my dad, I think it was just kind of in my blood that this can-do attitude of, let's just work through this and figure it out. So I always tell my clients, especially those that have this belief system that the corporation is there to design my career and help me get promoted, and that it's up to them to solve the DEI problem. And I look at them and I say, honey, I have some news for you. The cavalry isn't coming.
And nobody cares about you.
You're the cavalry.
Yeah.
You are the cavalry. Now, you can ask for help, but you're the cavalry. And so that's kind of been, whether for better or for worse, Robert, that's been my philosophy of life. And that I just truly believe I can help a lot of people. And so I will shout it from the mountain.
Yeah. So that isn't necessarily an easy thing to instill in someone who does not have that mindset. And I helped some people with that, and some people I failed with that because they just, we needed to do more work on that to and some people had big breakthroughs with it. They really did. I often say, it was my ongoing joke. If you call someone you don't know, they will not send a hitman to take you out.
Well, there is
that will not happen. So relax,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think it was Alan Weiss, who we know and love, who once told me, go ahead and try it. Nobody's shooting at you.
Yeah, exactly. Same
right.
Exactly. So
that's good.
So as an ordinary visionary, it's this courageousness, but it's not like the courageousness of going into a war and being shot. It's just like little steps that we're a little uncertain about. It's just one little step at a time. Well, maybe I could do this. I remember getting my first Mac Plus computer. God, I love that thing. And I've been using Macs for like 37 years now. I own a zillion of them. And I just discovered I had design ability. So I started to develop flyers and all kinds of things and mailers on this little Mac Plus for years. And some people go, well, I can't design. It was like, well, they have the software. Someone must be able to do it. I'll buy a book, And then I bought a book on how to do website design. And I didn't know it was impossible. So in a week, I had a website. Things like that.
I love it. I love it. Well, I love what you've done. And I still have my 18-pound manual called Action Plan Marketing Workbook. I remember that so fondly, and so many of the concepts in there
really
are timeless.
18 pounds, folks, but yeah.
No, all right. I'm being a little dramatic, but maybe 5 pounds.
Yeah, sure.
But it's comprehensive, to say the least. And, you started with those baby steps to get where you are now.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way now about the societal shift with generative AI and what it's going to do to the entire corporate structure as we know it, and the way we think, and the way we solve problems, and the way that we cure horrible chronic disease.
So you see it as a good thing, right?
Well, I am a bit of an eternal optimist. So that's one of the things. But I'm not saying that again, I go back and joke a lot about the tech bros. I don't get up in the morning and say, technology is here to change the world. I think it has the potential to make our quality of life better. if we have guardrails, if we have a conscience, if parents continue to extricate smartphones from children under the age of 14.
Yes, those are
If
very
that,
big. Texas just signed a law about that, and there was a newscaster the other day saying, I think it was a comedian or something, whatever, saying, I'm actually for that. He said, it was kind of interesting. Anyway, those are a lot of big gifts, though, Lisa. Human nature being what it is, to be selfish. And, we're not all ordinary visionaries. We're very selfish. We blame people. We want what we want. We haven't figured out how to stop wars yet on a completely large scale.
I know this is the reason that yours truly selected the career that she did, because trying to take on geopolitical strategy would have caused my head to explode.
Yeah, really.
I don't put myself in a category with Yuval Harari or Ian Bremmer. I know my swim lane. I know where I can make a difference. I see the potential for market leaders of where that profession is today and where it can go, so that marketing can be used to improve the world. I see that, and I see the examples of it.
Yeah.
So that is where I am focusing the next 10 years of my business and my life.
What do you see in business in that way, and marketing in that way, that's a real positive these days? Because, sometimes I feel that, I'm a marketing guy. Marketing is kind of evil in some ways. And I saw it as a necessity. If you've got something valuable, you've got to get the word out about it. But anyway, what are some of your thoughts about what's good marketing these days that is not only selling a product, but is actually helping people and making a difference?
I'm seeing a lot of our chief marketing officers reach across the table more than they ever have. So one of my clients, they're about a $700 million technology company, and the CMO, the chief marketing officer, is doing a really good job at reaching out to customer support and sales and the CEO. And he's really cultivating an entirely new way that they go to market. And everybody is getting paid and incentivized to focus on what's the right thing to do for the customer. And before he joined that company, it was like, oh no, I'm in marketing. I don't talk to customers. That's the sales job. The salespeople talk to customers. And now they're saying, oh no, we're going to realign all the pay and incentives, because now you are all part of these design teams whose job is to improve the condition of our customers. And so that really gets me jazzed.
Yeah.
And the other is that I'm really poking and provoking my clients to get serious about embracing truth telling as a skill that they train and cultivate within the marketing organization. You and I live in the United States, and election season is upon us, and we're going to see a lot of nefarious actors start to surface across social media. Fake news is going to take on a whole new meaning. We're going to have all kinds of trouble in that arena. So I am rallying. I have a lot of clients now who are also running newsrooms and are content managers, and they are doubling down on fact checking and putting out information that really has been validated and verified, so that marketing earns the respect that it needs to earn, even during these times where much of what you and I are seeing on social media is a deep fake. So we have the opportunity to show people that we really mean business and we can be viewed as a source of the truth. And, I write for HBR now. I'm a contributor there, and I'm writing for some other news sources. And so I am rallying for us to pursue the truth and to teach truth telling.
You think that would be such a normal thing? My parents instilled that in me, I think. They, especially my mother, she cared about social justice, and she was a really honest person and a straightforward person and a good person. And but marketing and truth don't live in the same domains in many cases. It's like if it's marketing, it must be exaggerated or hyped. And I'm a little shocked these days. I watch a lot of YouTube, and then the YouTube commercials come on. Once I signed up so I didn't get the commercials, but I unsigned up because I kind of like those commercials. It's interesting I find some interesting stuff that I like. However, some are so blatantly lies. They're just absolutely, completely deceptive. And it doesn't even seem that YouTube has a way of screening completely deceptive ads. I mean, completely, absolutely taking your money for nothing, for crap.
I'm sorry to hear that. It is sad. And I always tell my clients this. I just had our 84th episode of the Mindful Marketer live stream and podcast. And I say,
Wow.
For the love of Pete, do not turn to your software vendors or your social media CEOs to be your fact checkers or to help you develop your AI policy for your organization. Please consult with your attorneys and make sure you have a fact-checking function within the marketing team. So, it really cracks me up now as we watch. I have now completed about 120 hours of certification and training in generative AI. And
Really?
Yes, really.
120 hours?
Yes, I am very focused on it because it's a way to streamline a lot of the things that I don't enjoy doing.
Right.
So I'm the reason I'm bringing that up is that many of my clients need advice on what are our first steps we need to take to embrace generative AI ethically and effectively.
Yeah.
So I have to stay many steps ahead of them on the learning curve. So I only bring them pre-vetted content and ideas.
Right.
And so I'm bringing that up because a lot of them can get lulled into having to buy enterprise licenses of a given tool because they happen to be standardizing on some of the other tools in their company, or they're turning to their salespeople at these companies for guidance on copyright and intellectual property protection and setting AI policies and guardrails for their employees. And I say, slow down, people. Contact your IP attorney. Make sure you team up with people who know this and specialize in this that don't have a hidden agenda. So if anyone's interested, I have a whole library of content at lisanirell.com/events with some of these examples of and resources that I just give it away for free for people who are not working with me so that they step back, they apply their critical thinking to this increasingly complex set of questions.
Yeah. And this generative AI, ChatGPT, has only been around for a year or so. I mean, I'm not sure when I started using it, but I use it almost every day. I wrote an article 10 minutes before our meeting with AI. I had an idea in the shower. I put in the prompt, and I had an article, 2 minutes later, which then helps you develop some ideas. And, I don't usually publish those articles, but it's an amazing tool that can help you do a lot of stuff. How do you use it in your business?
Well,
ChatGPT or whatever else.
ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is the gorilla in terms of mind share right now in the marketplace, but there are tons of other products. If people go to my blog, I've got a number of articles. If you just put in generative AI in the search bar, you'll find some free lists of free courses you can take.
Yeah.
The industry is moving so quickly.
I know.
What I say right now will not be useful in about 4 hours. So,
yeah.
So all I will say is there are people you should be following who spend 10 to 12 hours a day doing nothing but tracking the industry. So I would follow Professor Ethan Mollick. I would follow Charlene Lee. That's Charlene L.I. She's going to be speaking at our innovation conference in May. I would follow a gentleman named Paul Reitzer, who runs the Marketing AI Institute in Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow.
And I would follow anything that Sam Altman and Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, I would follow those people, get your Google alert set up so that you're listening for the announcements. And if you prefer podcasts, make sure that you are listening to podcasts from me, from Paul Reitzer. He has a very good podcast.
Reitzer?
Paul Reitzer. Just do a search on Marketing AI Institute.
Okay.
And you will find them everywhere. They have a very good podcast on what's new in AI at this moment. Yeah. So those are some resources. I'm using it. I have multiple work streams right now, so I don't want to bore people. I just look at what are some things that are really boring and tedious that I want to automate. Like I get invited to a lot of podcasts. So how do I what's a nice response to all the invitations I get so I don't have to write the same thing every time?
Right.
How do I streamline onboarding for my marketing growth leader members? And how do I streamline that process? So I can spend more time writing and more time with clients and less time with the back office activities. I use multiple products that I won't bore you with, but I have 3 or 4 paid products that I use depending on the work stream and the business problem. And then it's kind of like my garage. I have one of those rollers, those tool chests that roll.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I need pliers and sometimes I need scissors.
So you have those all available to you. Wow. That's impressive, Lisa. Really it is.
Well, thank you. And I would tell people, please, if you do nothing else, for the love of Pete, do not put any of your client information in the large language models. Make sure that you are not feeding the LLM with any client data or any confidential data that you don't want to share with the entire world. That's the first rule. And stop using the free versions. It's a waste of time. Go subscribe and get the paid versions. So your security might be slightly more improved.
Right. Well, I'm still on 3.5.
Oh, get the paid versions. Get the paid versions. They're so much better.
Really better, huh? Okay. Yeah, it's $20 a month. What's the big deal, right? Yeah.
A virtual assistant costs me many times more than that. I still have one. And I'm telling you, folks, if you need a writing assistant, a planning assistant, a business process assistant, what are you waiting for? They're $20 a month.
Yeah, really. Being retired, it's not such a big issue for me anymore, but I get it.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm still in the stream of work. I am not playing dilettante at this stage of my life. Someday I look forward to being a dilettante.
I'm not a dilettante, for God's sake. I'm
Oh, I
curious.
wasn't calling you a dilettante. I was saying, I don't dabble in business. Like I run a full-time, full-on
Yes.
business. So I'm saying if you run a full-time business
Yeah.
or maybe you are in full-time vacation planning mode, it pays to have some paid versions of the generative AI tools.
Yeah, definitely. So much of the news around AI is interesting. It always says, well, is it the end of civilization as we know it? And what are all the terrible things that could happen? And I suppose there are some, as if it will become conscious. I saw the movies. I saw the Terminator movie and the Forbin Project. All of those were about AI launching a nuclear attack and all that kind of nonsense. And people are worried that it's going to take away gazillion jobs. But, I think it's going to open up opportunities that we couldn't even imagine before. That seems to be your take on it, right?
Could I share another story with you?
Yes, that would be a good way perhaps to wrap this up.
I have a client who's a chief digital officer.
Yeah.
They have 260 people on their team. They run revenues. Most of the organization gets most of its revenues through digital marketing, online marketing, and social media. So I talked to them the other day. I said, "What's on your mind?" "Oh my gosh, I'm a chief digital officer. I like experimentation. I like agile marketing. I like running experiments and getting results. I like all of that. But 20% of my time is spent elsewhere these days." I said, "What is it?" "It's dealing with change." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And they said, "Well, I've got two camps of people. One camp is, these people come to me and ask, how is it that you're going to protect me from losing my job to AI?" The other camp of people are rolling up their sleeves and saying, "Give me $10,000 so I can go run an experiment. I've got a use case for generative AI that could improve the relationship with our customers. And I'm going to submit to you I'm going to fill out these 7 questions. I'm going to send you my proposed case that I want to go test so that I can add more value to my role, to my team, and to the customer." Guess who they're promoting? So, I could wake up every morning and catastrophize.
Right.
And ask, "Oh, damn, it's another day, a slog through enemy territory."
Yes.
Or I could wake up and say, "Who else can I help today? How can I make someone's life better today?" So every day I get to wake up and choose which direction and which wolf I want to feed.
Right.
And I'm not a motivational speaker here, Robert. I'm going to tell you that I'm just fortunate that about 90% of the time I choose the latter. So the 10% of the time I call in the troops. I do, I practice, I go through my mindfulness exercises to shift my thinking. But generally, I've been fortunate that I get to stay on the positive channel most of the time. And I know that's possible for all of you watching this right now.
Yeah. It's something you have to work on. It's something you have to be committed to. You have to generate it every day. I don't have to work anymore. So it's an interesting thing when every day, I just don't want to be a lump. So I want to be thinking creative things and reading creative things. I've been watching some of the most amazing YouTube videos and interviews. Some of the podcasts of the smartest people in the world are being interviewed. Physicists and psychologists and astrophysicists and all that kind of stuff. There's so much wonderful stuff out there to explore. Anyway, so Lisa,
it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun time to be alive.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting and it's sometimes terrifying.
Well, I want to say, Robert, before we go, just thank you for helping me conquer my temporary terror over the years.
Yeah.
and for inspiring tens of thousands of people, because you really have. You've helped tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands. And your style is unusual. You're caring, you're generous. I will always remember you're helping me with my business back in Oregon and helping run that in-person seminar in Bend, Oregon.
I remember
and
that. Yeah.
You are, you're just one of the good guys in my life, and I will love you for that.
Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I really had a lot of fun, perhaps more than any other interview I've had so far, really.
It was such a great way to spend my afternoon. Thank you so much, Robert.
Okay, so we will see you, and I hope we have a chance to talk again.
I'm looking forward to it.